This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Roger Mabon is the co-founder of EmLogic, which designs and markets peripheral products for desktop and portable computers, including computer backup and docking solutions using the high-speed Thunderbolt interface. Prior to EmLogic, Roger founded G Technology, which is known to media folks around the world. Hello, Roger. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. I want to start with some basics. How would you describe EmLogic?
Well, EmLogic is focused on, as you mentioned, storage peripherals using the Thunderbolt interface. So we do have some docking solutions, some Thunderbolt expansion chassis that allow you to put cards into boxes and then hook them up to Macs, which of course only have Thunderbolt ports. But our main product line at this point is archiving solutions. So Thunderbolt-enabled LTO systems, specifically designed to archive content from hard disk-based solutions.
Well, there's been a lot of companies that make peripherals. Why did you decide to start EmLogic?
Well, I mean, as a founder of G-Tech, I've sold a lot of hard drives in my day. And my mission now is to actually make sure that some of that content that is residing on those drives, sitting on the shelves in various post houses and whatnot that I see all over the place, actually gets put somewhere that's going to protect that content for the long term. So having content sitting on a hard drive on a shelf is not an archive strategy. It's actually...
Why not? I want to get to that. Why can't we just leave our hard drives on a shelf?
Well, hard drives are not designed to sit around powered off. So having that hard drive sitting on the shelf is like bread molding, basically. I mean, you'll be lucky to get that data back in, say, 5 or 6 years. People do it a lot. Sometimes archiving is an afterthought. We're here to hopefully change that with our really simple and easy to use LTO solutions.
Well, I want to talk, there's a difference between making a backup and making an archive. How would you differentiate between the two?
Well, backup is just backing up your data for use in the near future. I mean, you're backing up your files that may be using on a daily basis, maybe, whatever the content might be. Archive is different. That is your actual archive for the long term. Think of it as like the negative. So you complete your project, you remove it off of the spinning disk system that you use to actually edit and make the whatever you're doing, and then you actually move that content from the spinning drives to the tape system. And you do this because an LTO7 tape, which is about that size, this tape, which can now hold 6 terabytes of capacity at about $100 of cost, can sit on a shelf for 30 plus years. So that's 5 or 6 times the longevity of a spinning drive sitting around.
Well, I want to come back to that because the 30 years is somewhat of a misnomer, but before we talk about the tape, there's also an optical technology that Sony is talking about. I think it's called the ODA architecture. What's that compared to LTO tape?
Well, I don't know much about ODA. I've certainly heard about it. It's an optical disc format. I think it's based on Blu-ray type technology. As far as I recall, they have multi-discs in some kind of little cartridge that holds, I think, 100 gigabytes per disc. And they have numerous discs in a little cartridge. And the idea is similar to tape. That would be a long-term archiving strategy, just using a different technology. As far as I know, it's quite expensive and limited in terms of capacity at this point.
Well, let's switch back to tape, which is where you and your products are focused. LTO tapes have different levels. I've heard of LTO 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. What's the difference between the different levels?
So that's right. So LTO has been around since Generation 1. It's been many, many years. And now we're at Generation 7, which is the big news. It's recently introduced. So LTO 5, we'll start there, because that's when something called LTFS came out, which is an IBM software that enables a tape to be mounted as if it were a hard drive. So if you're on a Mac and you're using LTFS software, you actually see the tape pop up on your desktop. Now this is great because that enables the drag and drop functionality. which is the same paradigm as using a disk. You can just drag content to and from, which is wonderful. It makes the tape much more easy to handle and use. And that was started in generation 5. Then, of course, we moved on to 6, and now today we're at generation 7.
So is the difference only in numbers, or is there a performance or storage difference between them?
So we'll just talk about LTO6. LTO6 has a tape cartridge that looks similar to this that handles 2.5 terabytes of native storage capacity. Okay? An LTO6 tape drive's maximum data transfer rate is 160 megabytes per second, so it's quite fast. But moving on to LTO7, which is the tape I'm holding here, this tape now has a native capacity of 6 terabytes, and the performance is now 300 megabytes per second. So significantly faster than a single spinning drive, which is great because that means the backup takes that much less time because we're now doing 300 megabyte per second transfers.
Can someone still buy LTO6, or is everything LTO7?
No, LTO6 is widely available. Our M-Tape solutions, we sell tons of LTO6. We started selling LTO7 at the beginning of this year, but both are available. But interestingly enough, what we're finding is that most people are opting for our LTO7 devices. They're slightly more expensive, but they do have the higher capacity, the higher speeds that I mentioned. The nice thing is that an LTO7 drive can read and write to an LTO6 tape. Okay, so the LTO6 tapes are very affordable, about $25 for 2.5 terabytes. So what we're seeing, like I said, is people are opting for the 7 hardware and potentially using 6 tapes because they're cheaper than the 7s, which go for about $130.
Do they both have the same longevity and resistance to damage? Is there anything different between LTO6 and LTO7 aside from speed and capacity?
No, in terms of longevity, it's identical. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned that I did want to come back to is the fact that LTO7 or 6 tapes have a life of about 30 to 35 years. While that's true physically, the format itself changes about every 18 months. So can we just take an LTO6 tape, put it on the shelf, and come back to it 30 years and be able to play it? Or do we need to look at it more as an active archiving system where we're going to have to change our tapes every couple of formats as the tape drives change?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the standard. You do want to migrate to this, every 4 or 5 years when the next generation might come out, or the generation after the next one. So, I mean, if you're on a 5 now, it's probably time to start thinking about moving to 7. That would be a very good thing to do. But one nice thing, again, is this LTFS software, which is an absolute industry standard. So I can make an LTFS tape in one of our M-Tape units, and then I can take it to any system that's LTFS compatible, be it a Mac, Windows, or a Linux machine, and I can still use that tape, which is really nice. The interchange in that regard is fantastic.
One of the things I've heard about LTFS is that when it's on a Mac, the Mac Finder is not tape-friendly, so that whenever it opens a folder on the Mac, the Finder needs to record a small hidden file, which means there's a lot of tape shuffling back and forth. Are we better off working with LTFS natively on a Mac, or are we better off working with software which is designed for archiving?
Yeah, so it's a very, very good question, one that I get asked a lot. So when we sell our system, we do have a utility that will mount the tape as if it were a drive, which absolutely enables drag and drop functionality. But there are some limitations, like you mentioned, especially with the Finder and Spotlight in Mac OS. So we do highly recommend that people look at third-party software packages to actually do the archiving. And these packages make the process seamless. They have a lot of nice features. The biggest ones are verification. Obviously, when you take your source content and you put it to an LTO tape, you want to be 100% sure that what is now residing on the tape is 100% the same as the source. So these packages do these verifications, which is really nice. They also index the footage, so when you need to go back and retrieve the footage, it simplifies everything enormously. So yes. We recommend packages from Imagine Products. One's called Pre-Roll Post. There's a company called Yoyata, which makes Yoyata ID LTFS software. We also work with companies like Brew and from Tolus, and certainly ArchiWare.
We've talked with the folks at Imagine Products on a recent show, and we just finished chatting with Tim Smith over at Totolis Group. And ArcuWare will be on in the next segment, so we'll be learning a lot about this. LTO drives are made by two companies. They're made by IBM and they're made by HP. Given the fact that there's only two manufacturers and lots of people packaging the drives, like EmLogic, does the brand that makes that total package make a difference, or are we really just sort of shopping based on price?
Yeah, so we use IBM mechanisms internal to our products. Now, what we've done is we've taken these industry standard drives and packaged them in a way that allows you to attach them via the Thunderbolt connection on any Thunderbolt-enabled computer. That's our secret sauce, if you will. Taking these native SAS tape drives and converting the connection to Thunderbolt, which just makes everything extremely simple, especially on Mac, which all Macs have Thunderbolt connections. So that's what we've done, and we're actually the only Thunderbolt certified LTO, meaning Apple and Intel have certified this device. So that's basically what we do.
Well, let's talk about the device itself. What is it, and what does it cost? And when we're buying it, what are we buying?
Okay, so there's different flavors now because we're supporting both LTO6 and LTO7 technology. So our desktop M-tape unit with LTO6 has a retail price of $35.99. And what you get with that is you get the desktop enclosure, obviously including the LTO6 tape drive inside, dual Thunderbolt ports, comes with a Thunderbolt cable, and it comes with one piece of LTO6 media and a cleaning cartridge. Okay? So $35.99 list. The M-Tape LTO7 version is $51.99 list price, so slightly more expensive, but again, twice the capacity, basically twice the speed. And again, comes with everything you need to just basically plug it in and get going.
And both these units are called what? What's the name?
They're called the EmLogic M-Tape.
Now, you've also got a rack-mounted version. Is that also Thunderbolt specific?
Yes, that's correct. So we have another product we call the M-Rack, and the M-Rack is a 1U device, rack-mountable, that contains one or two LTO drives. So some people opt to get two drives in this rack because it enables them with software, such as some of the software I mentioned prior, to simultaneously write to two LTO tape cartridges for the ultimate in security. So you have a safety copy and another copy that you can put somewhere else. It's a nice feature.
What strategy should people have when they're archiving? What process should they go through?
In terms of, basically what happens today, obviously we have these cameras that have these SSDs basically on them. That's our film basically at this point. So what people do is they take these cartridges, right? They offload them via some type of dock, and they typically offload them to spinning drives, right? So that's where you get your edit done. You do everything in color, whatever you might need to do. You finish your project, and then you offload to tape for the actual archive. So once the project is finished, you archive the tape. Now that said, people are also archiving on set because these cartridges that come out the cameras are in fact your negative. They're expensive, you want to reuse them. So the nice thing about our M-Tape is it's a portable little device that you can bring on set, and you can actually do the archive in the field. And then you can recycle these cards for your camera, but knowing that you have that on here, so that you're okay with erasing that actual footage right off those camera cards because you know it's on LTO where it's the safest possible place to put your media.
Should we have more than one copy of our archive?
Yes. I mean, look, the reality is, I think I mentioned this before, archiving seems to be an afterthought. We realize this. We're trying to make this as easy and affordable so it's maybe not so much of an afterthought. But the fact is, it is an afterthought, and people are putting their stuff on hard drives. And once you lose something, you start to think about the archive strategy, right? But yes, it's good to have stuff that you're going to use in the short term sitting on hard drives. You certainly have to put it here. This is your negative, basically. And, you know, we talk about the cloud. The cloud is also an interesting place to put content. But if you're generating these massive amounts of 4K data that we see nowadays, the cloud can get very, very expensive. Whereas for $100, I can put my 6 terabytes right here. And I have my hands on it. And I know it's going to be around for a long time.
And Roger, where can people go on the web to learn more about M-Tape and M-Rack?
Sure, it's www.emlogic.com.
And Roger Mabon is one of the co-founders of MLogic. And Roger, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks very much.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.